Let's go to our Washington bureau chief, Tim Russert. Tim, this afternoon, Congress is expected to pass by, I would think, acclamation, the president's request for $20 billion in emergency funding.
Absolutely, Tom. No debate, no discussion of the so-called Social Security Trust Fund. We are in war, and Congress, both parties, are responding.
Tim, what else can we expect from Congress in the next several days? Do you think that there will be some kind of an attempt to have an official declaration of war to go with all this?
Tom, the president can respond militarily to this act of terrorism pretty much any way he wants. But politically, and perhaps even legally, both the White House and the Congress think it better because of the War Powers Act to seek some kind of official approval from the Congress, and that will happen. They're working on the language as we speak. You showed that footage of President Bush in the Oval Office earlier, and it was very, very powerful. One saying this is the first war of the 21st century, but he also said something else. The focus of this administration is now terrorism. It's almost as if on September 11th we saw the second Bush administration, the first dealing with taxes and budget and the economy, and now suddenly, a little bit more quickly than he ever thought of, he has embarked on a worldwide crusade against terrorism, and he's looking to lead it. Those who've worked with him over the last few days have said that he does recognize that this is history being played out, that he has now been put into the center of something so much bigger than he had ever imagined or anyone had ever talked about during the campaign of 2000. And thirdly, Colin Powell, who was giving a news conference a little bit earlier, said some very interesting things about Pakistan, which you pointed out a couple seconds ago, Tom. He was asked, what about the sanctions we have against Pakistan because of their nuclear testing? And we have cut back on the aid dramatically. He said, well, those are interesting things to talk about, aren't they? A strong suggestion from the Secretary of State. There are very deep and intense negotiations and discussions going on with Pakistan. Why is that critical? If we wanted to launch a ground campaign, it would be a perfect base. Secondly, we cannot do anything in Afghanistan that in any way would destabilize Pakistan because Pakistan is a nuclear power, and we could not afford letting nuclear weapons fall in the hands of Islamic fundamentalists.
Tim, it is an international chess match with the stakes could not be higher, obviously, and there are so many pieces on the board at this time, and it's very hard to see where all of this is going to play out. But certainly, this president of the United States, as every president has been in one way or another, is being tested as no one expected that he would be in his first several months in office.
I think about campaigns, presidential campaigns, which we cover ever so closely. And yet what happens when a man takes the oath of office and sits in the Oval Office, takes the oath of office and sits in the Oval Office, what happens to them and how they are in fact tested. You remarked the other day, Tom, about Pearl Harbor, about the Cuban Missile Crisis, about the assassination of John Kennedy, a handful of events that can in any way be compared to this. This is George W. Bush's moment in history. He realizes that. The old Bob Dylan song, today's the first day of the rest of your life. He will be measured by his ability as commander-in-chief in this first war of the 21st century as he has defined it. Colin Powell, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, Vice President Cheney have been by his side on the phone around the clock. They understand the consequences. We have now drawn the line. They must follow through. If it's Osama bin Laden, then he must be gone after. And in the words of Senator John Kerry, Democrat of Massachusetts, who is in all likelihood running for president, Osama bin Laden must be killed. This is very, very high stakes. This is history before our very eyes.
Thank you very much, NBC's Washington bureau chief, Tim Russert. Of course, these circumstances take the measure not just of the president and his team, but all the Democrats and other Republicans on Capitol Hill as well. It also takes the measure of all of us because they are a reflection of who we are at this particular time in history.